Hey everybody, today we're going to be taking a look at the really crucial part that Apple loops play in the chord track and the session instrument and session players ecosystem. This is one of those things that I feel like perhaps the Logic team really wanted like 10 or 15 years ago. Whenever Apple loops first came out, they were thinking that this would be a little bit more like it is now, and then it got stripped back. We lost some things, and now we're finally able to start beginning to realize that dream of having loops that really interact with the other tracks in interesting ways. Let me walk you through just a quick way of looking at this. We're going to start with an example, and then we'll break down some of the tools and ways that we can further work with Apple loops. So first and foremost, we're over in the loop browser, which is O, if you type that on your keyboard with the default key commands. At the top, we have our sound pack filters. Right now I'm looking at Track Girl. We're going to start there, but you can see all of the other ones that you can filter, or you can just say show all, or you can do some of the other ones, from the old packs. Now, with this, if we look at this, each individual one, you'll see how many beats are in it. We can favorite this. We can see the default tempo. And then if we have these three little notes in that chord stack, that means it has chords attached to the actual loop, and then the key of the actual thing. We're going to be focusing on these ones that have the chords already attached. That means someone went through and programmed what those chords are. Cool. I wish actually that we had a better editor for doing that ourselves. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I'm going to drag out this Get Closer Piano 2 as our starting point. We're going to say import the tempo, sure, and it has the chords. You'll see that they're flying up to the chord track. Now, there are some different settings on when those will pop up, but if we drag them typically into an empty place with no chord track, then those will do that. Now, if I, for instance, drag this other file down below, it will override. So you want to be careful. Make sure you're only doing one of those at a time. And again, we'll look at some of those other settings for the chord tracks as we do this. Down here, the little three dots in the circle, you'll see replace global chords with region chords. Right there. So that's the setting that allows us to override those. I'm going to leave that on because I want whatever loops I'm pulling with the region-based chords to fly up into the global chords as well. So here's what this sounds like. And I'm going to start adding some additional things. We're going to add a new session player, drummer. Now, of course, drums don't need chords in order to play, but they do follow along the chords for rhythms and things like that if you set it to do that. We're going to do funk rock for the moment, hit create. And we're not done getting this set up, but we're going to push play, listen to it for a second. Okay, so a few things we're going to do right off the bat. I'm going to come down to the snare and kick rhythm, and I want that to follow the Get Closer Piano 2 track. And so the pattern is going to do something a little different to match that. That's fine. And then we can do this either way, but I'm going to right-click and do the track header for the groove track. Now, when I said either way, we can have the groove source be the loop or the drums. For now, we're going to set the groove track source to be that loop, the Get Closer Piano 02. I'm going to have the drums timing adjust to that. So now it's like these are two people who are playing together in one place. Turn up the intensity or complexity a little bit, turn down the intensity a little bit. And I might actually change this hat pattern to a little faster one. Okay, drums, super easy. They don't need to follow the harmony at all. Let's add our second session player. This time we'll do a bass player, and I think we'll use the retro rock for now. Click Create, and it is going to follow those chords. We're also going to have the groove follow it as well. That way, the timing of those hits and the bass and the drums will all happen together, instead of whatever independent groove these were created at. Let's go back to the beginning. Now the bass is jamming along with that. Last one, we're going to do a keys, and I think we'll do some broken chords, create. But of course, we're just going to instantly switch out that piano with, we'll do one of the vintage, we'll do a B3 organ. I'm going to switch that to the block chords, although we're going to have to change it back to the organ again. I just want something to kind of fill in a pad for that. One more try. Simple pad. That's what I think we're really going to have be. I think we're going to like that better. Let's get rid of these other effects. We'll hit that groove track check so that it follows the timing. One thing I really like about this, so I usually use the score editor. I pop that up so I can remember what chords I'm on. I do think in terms of chords and notes and roots and the harmonies, but this, in some ways, gives me that same functionality, because at the top of the screen I can see, we're in G minor, E flat, major, D minor 7, etc. And so I can add another instrument here and actually play along with it. And I see those chords at the top, and it gives me enough of a structure to be able to play along with it. So I don't know if we want, let's just do, for the sake of this, just kind of the Rhodes sound. Yeah. So I can add another part. So the layers begin to build. We have that original loop with the chords. The 3 session players are just following those chords. We've used the groove track to help align the actual feel. But like, for instance, the bass is actually using, and the drums are taking into consideration what the loop is doing when it's actually programming the beats that it's doing. It leaves off some when it might overlap and cause more sonic confusion. Let's go ahead and just record this in real quick. Right, and so now we can actually use the groove track for that one as well to help the timing. Okay, now, one of the things with loops that I think is really useful in this kind of workflow is that we can option click, drag that over, and you'll see these two little arrows that go up and down with the mouse, and I could choose from the other alternatives. When you're making your own loops, if you name them the same name but just with a new number for each one, it will automatically do this as well. Let's see what this one sounds like now. Okay, we'll go to that section. And you'll see that we didn't get the chords up into the chord track, but we can come through here and say, paste region chords to the global track if they're not the same as they were for the other one. Here, let's open up our chord track. Chords, there we go. Option, click, drag, and then we'll have those over there. Cool. Now, we can, if we want to, just duplicate all the session player files. Every once in a while, you're going to hear the timing kind of goes sideways. And that's because perhaps the loop and the session player, like drums, are just too far apart from each other. One of the things you can try under those circumstances would be making the drums the source for the actual timing and see if the loop is bending well enough to that. And if this is a different part of the song, perhaps we want the complexity of the drums to go down and maybe the intensity and maybe change the hi-hat pattern. Same thing with the other of these two instruments. We could really change what's happening with them. Let's actually do an inversion here, make it more complex for the bass but less intense. Now, because I changed the groove track source for this section, it actually changed for all of it. And so you do want to pay attention to make sure that whatever changes you make. This is one area where I wish we could set a groove track per part of the song and have that really controlled in a different way. I have a couple tips for that as well, because the groove track doesn't necessarily have to be audible. If you wanted to do a custom groove track for a song, you could just make a new track, put in the different things, elements that you wanted to have the source be for that, but just make sure that the fader's turned down so you're not actually hearing it, but it does control the groove throughout. But in this case, we're going to leave it be the drums. Okay, so we're building a song around the chord structure that came with one Apple loop. If we want, and this is one of the first things that we can do currently with this, if we want to be able to change the overall part of what that loop is doing, we can't. It won't respond to changes to the groove or to the chord track. If I change the chords, this loop will still play the original thing. The one exception to that is that we can come through here on our signature track and our global track. And I'm going to put a pencil tool into play here and just hit that right there. And actually, what we really want to do is down with the key signature right there. So for instance, I could, if I'm in the key of G minor, we could just step it up to A minor, right? A whole step up. And we'll go right back to G minor right there. That way, so that is the only way right now to have loops actually change transpositions mid-song is by changing the key signature. And so we think of the key signature more as a transposition track rather than an actual key change track. Or you can think of it as both. It doesn't matter. Okay, so cool. What happens if we have a song that we're working on where we play something? For instance, this first MIDI track this MIDI region that I made. These are all the MIDI files, the MIDI notes right there. What if I wanted to make this into a loop? You could export and add to loop library. It's possible. When you do it this way, if there are no region-based chords, it won't take the chords with you. And so if you really want your exported MIDI as a loop with the chords, then you have to do something a little bit tricky. And let me show you what that is real quick, because I think it's worth exploring just for 1 second. I'm going to make a new empty track. I'm going to drag the chords from the chord track down into this. What this does is it just puts notes for each of those chords into there. And one of the nice things we can do is just delete them. I'm going to come through, select all of this MIDI, copy, and then I'm going to paste that MIDI into there. Now, you'll see I've got this MIDI region of what I played. Has those chord tracks inside the region. So they're the region-based chord tracks. Now if I export this to the loop library, I can come through and say, keys demo, which is what this is. And it's a loop. And we're going to say, it's G minor is that. And we're going to come down and tell it's a keyboard and electric piano. Sure. And we'll say single, clean, electric, relaxed, cheerful. That we don't have to use them all. We're going to create this though. And it will create it. It actually bounces out an audio version and keeps the MIDI version. That way you can preview it over here without loading an instrument. But now I'm going to come up here to the sound packs. I'm going to say My Loops, and you'll see Keys Demo. And even though it doesn't have those 3 little notes there, when I drag it out, look at what came with it. All of the chords. And so this is one way to make our own MIDI-based loops that have the chords with them. Awesome. I haven't found a way to reliably do this with audio or do it at all with audio, but we have the ability to do it with MIDI, and that's actually really useful because if we're playing something along to a track that has those chords, or we're making new chords in the chord track from scratch and we play some parts, then we can turn in any of those things into the Apple loops with the chords with them. Super nice. The other thing we can do is if you're playing like a guitar part, you can always just take this MIDI region that has the notes in them from the chord track. Nothing fancy, just straight notes. And you can turn this into an Apple loop and preserve the chords to use them later in a song later on. And then once you have these, you can throw in the other session players and build an arrangement around those using the chords that you want. Cool. This makes it all super nice and easy to do. If I could request any new features, it would be that we could more easily create Apple loops that have all the chords in them for both audio and MIDI. I would also want, if I brought out an Apple loop and it wasn't the exact chords that were there, that it would transpose the notes to match. Now we can do that a little bit because if you bring out, for instance, let's just pull out something else here. I think this would be a little bit easier if I do it with MIDI instead of audio, although audio does transpose as well. It just doesn't transpose quite as easily with additional features. In the keyboard collection, let's pull out one of these. But what I want to do is first turn off the replace global chords by saying keep region chords. Let's zoom in a little bit here. We'll just pull something out. So it doesn't change the chords. Let's see if it matches though. So it is transposing the overall key to match, but sometimes we'll end up with internal harmonies that don't match, especially with the MIDI notes. One of the things that's really useful is that we can come through and say, I want to, select all of our notes. I want to do this with minor and G, and then you can make it all quantized to those notes in the scale. And so we have a little bit of that ability to do that, but it's not great. It doesn't extend over to all of the nuances of audio. If you have audio that has complex harmonies, then they have a bigger chance of clashing with other Apple loops. But we've come so far, and I feel like this is going to be something that will continue to improve and get better with each iteration of Logic moving forward. We already got some new things with the chord track. Some refinements, so to speak, with 11.2. And I think we're just going to keep on getting better with this. I hope this was useful. Hope looking at some of the ways that Apple loops now can be used in bigger and better ways in our projects. I think it's an important topic to talk about. Okay, that's it. Hope you enjoyed. Talk to you later.